to cover.
Reds have lost 6 in a row, bud.
Yeah, we're not. I don't even want to touch that.
You guys can go heavy MLB if you want.
Yeah, we're gonna go. We're gonna go. There's too much stuff going on around the league, and I refuse to talk about 6 in a row.
Maybe just touch on it. Say, hey man, look, Reds are struggling. I think you got to holler at your boy Hunter Green though. Extension.
That's right. 5 years and 60 some.
50. I think it's like 53 guaranteed.
Yeah. Yep.
You got Scherzer. You got A's to Vegas. You got Mad Bum. He's out.
What happened to Mad Bum?
Baumgartner. You see him yelling at Contreras, and then the next day the Diamondbacks DFA'd him.
Oh my goodness.
Nah, we probably don't need to touch that one.
Good old.
I might want to get some Carhartt stuff later on.
I wonder what kind of dude he is.
I don't know him, but
he just seems like an angry dude, just all the time.
He's angry. That was gonna be he's angry.
Yeah, angry dude. And then Drew Maggi, the 50-year-old, the 50-year-old that got cut up. So you can start with the Rojos, because they lost to Pittsburgh, and I just saw Pittsburgh play twice, so it'll be a good foray into what we're dealing with in the Central. The Cardinals struggling, Reds even worse, but the surprise Pittsburgh coming out of nowhere, playing really good baseball. Among one of the biggest surprises, I think they're in the first place in the Central.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, let's do this. Should I take all my red stuff down then?
No, that would be wrong. Pittsburgh is in first place, 16-7. How about that? All right, here we go. And welcome back, everybody. It's Farm to the Show. I'm Chris Dickerson, joined by Mr. Paul Janisch, former teammate, best buddy, and lover of all things crossword, Tex-Mex, and a man who is deep as the ocean. Paul, it's a new week. It's a new day, and there's a lot going on around baseball right now.
Yeah, a lot of action. Dickie, what's up, man? Good
how's your Monday going so far? It's early.
Monday's above average so far. There's still some Monday left, but we're above average so far.
Good. So what do we got going? We're going to be all over the place. But first we're going to start with the Rojos. We've lost 6 in a row. It's looking bleak over there. Not a whole lot of good news coming out of Cincinnati right now. Set an all-time low in attendance last week with, I believe, what was I don't even know the number. I'm going to refrain from even mentioning it because it'd be too sad. The only thing I can think of, it couldn't be any worse than that doubleheader we played against Miami that one year when we had 17 people in the stands. We could hear everything that the bullpen was saying. But yeah, it's dire times over there. However, Hunter Green, my boy Hunter, getting the extension, that's good to see. I think we're all glad to see that he's become the pitcher that we all wanted him to be, and that the Reds have seen the long-term impact and the plans to keep him around for quite some time. But to make that impression after having a breakout year last year and solidifying him being the go-to guy and the player that they're going to continue to build this franchise around.
Yeah, no, it's big time for Hunter. Congratulations to him, number one. The team right now is struggling. Offensively, they're not scoring runs with much consistency. The rotation as a whole hasn't been great of late. That being said, they have run into some stiff competition. Obviously, Pittsburgh's playing good. They're at the top of the division right now. They ran through the Braves, like we talked about, the Phillies. Those are good teams. That being said, as a unit, they're struggling. They're moving some guys around. The Barrero kid's playing short. He's playing center. They got Senzel back. He's playing right field. My point in bringing some of that up is that there's not much certainty with regards to who's going to be where and when. And on a day-to-day basis, that's tough. Coming to the yard, not sure who's going to be where, not sure where you're going to be hitting. And if we're being totally transparent, there's some auditioning going on, right? Like this in particular on the position player side, and that's just part of it. We knew we were going to get there, and so hopefully some guys can take advantage of some opportunities. It's still cold up there in Cincy, I know that, and so hopefully as the weather starts to get better, some guys will get hot and they'll get going in the right direction. But I will say with regards to Hunter, the ability speaks for itself, man. I think it's really good to see the organization embracing a character guy that's gonna be a big part of the community. Obviously on the field, he's going to play a large role, but I think there's a lot to be said for why he was probably going to end up being the first of a few of those young guys to kind of get locked in for a few years. I don't know if they're going to go more pitcher with Lodolo next. I don't know if we're going to switch to maybe a position player with India. There's some options there, but I think it says a lot about Hunter and what the organization thinks about him, not just now, but into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's nice to be solidified. I think as hard as Hunter's worked, like you said, that being a huge characteristic as well as that off the field, knowing that you're going to be signing not just a great player, but a great person. And like you said, it's going to be one of the first chips to fall as they look to extend some of these guys and get this core together to continue to build on. On the other side of things, I think you can agree with me that the mental toll that this auditioning takes is very, very difficult. When you show up and you're a young player just trying to break in and not knowing where you're going to be, it's incredible. Being in that position, when you show up, it's like the opportunities that you do get, you're going to put way more pressure on yourself, knowing that somebody's going to be nipping at your heels, and that day you don't perform, there's going to be another guy in there. And I've always said it. We've said it to each other, and I remember talking to Lance Nix back in the day when you have to go into a spring training and do that auditioning, and you got to be out there prepared to go 150% and run through a wall. Like it's exhausting and it's a part of the game. But when you have that ability where they just, the organization can come up and be like, hey, this is yours. You go out there and do your thing. Like that is a huge mental load off when you know that you're going to go out there, you're going to do your best, but at the end of the day, like they're going to give you your chances rather than it kind of being a roulette and open, a revolving door that as soon as you go for over, you're going to be looking over your shoulder. So it's definitely difficult what's happening over there, and I hope they can get it figured out. And at the end of the day, I think this is all a learning experience for a lot of those young guys.
Yeah. Which long term is probably we'll look back and it'll be productive, but during in the midst of it, it can be frustrating for the fans for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know how it is. It's these fans, they lean and they they gravitate towards certain players that they think that should be there, and when they're not in there, it just kind of it causes it definitely causes some angst when you're throwing out a different lineup every day. And you just we mentioned at the first show we started doing this is it's going to be about consistency. It's about showing up, putting in the work, but at least competing on a consistent basis. But when you're throwing out a different lineup and kind of playing mix and match, it becomes very difficult.
Yeah, for sure.
And like you said, it's we're not making excuses, but they've run into some teams that are playing really good baseball. You have the defending champs in the Phillies going to Atlanta, former World Series champions, and then going in, and then Pittsburgh coming to town fresh off a just straight ass beating in Colorado. I got to attend two of those games in Colorado, and the team they're no joke. They're playing really good baseball, not just at the top of the division. They have the second best record in baseball right now, right behind the Rays at 19-3.
Hey, Dickie, tell me, what do we got on the first pitch in Colorado? Can you give me a little background there?
Buddy.
My buddy Chris Dickerson threw out the first pitch. Doesn't look like he's been doing much arm care of late, but that's okay. But how do we get on the field throwing out the first pitch?
Well, it's Earth Day. It's Earth Week. And so me being a man of the environment and the saving of this planet, it was something to commemorate the Rockies' work, environmental work. We were fortunate enough to get to have a check presentation on the field, and me being the lone professional baseball player in the group, I was elected to take a former, but seeing that Brent Suter is one of our players for the Planet Ambassadors, we thought the Rockies thought it would only be fitting that I throw the first pitch to Brent. And I tell you what, with not a whole lot of warm up, and a 30-foot toss. Granted, there wasn't a whole lot of people there, but I've never been one to baby the ball, so I certainly had to,
Let it go.
I had to let it go a little bit. And the cameraman, if you look at the replay, he's right on the dish. I mean, the guy's like towing the line as it's being made, and it was good. It was my first pitch experience. I almost put the camera guy on the IL, but it was a short throw. They wouldn't let me go from the rubber, and I kind of been hyped up by all the players the day before. Kutch said I won't accept anything less than 90 miles per hour. So it was sheerly disappointed in that regard, but it was all around great, great time.
It couldn't happen to a better guy.
But I tell you what, Paul, if you haven't done a first pitch, I don't know if they like this at all parks, but they gave me one of those vinyl baseballs, one of those cheap. And so the idea was it says ceremonial first pitch on it, and they give you a little case for it. I'm like,
right.
Hey, you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not throwing that ball because someone's going to get hurt. All it takes is a little bit moisture. That thing is that thing's like throwing a pool cue.
What an ironic segue into all you needed was a little rosin and some sweat.
That's all I needed. It was about 60 degrees, but I was a little bit nervous, so I did have a little bit of moisture. They're putting down the they're still kind of maintaining the home plate area. They hadn't put the rosin bag down yet, and I could have used a little bit of Scherzer, and perhaps it would have I wouldn't have buzzed the cameraman up and in, but. I could have used some spider tack or some rosin, some sweat, or even some what was that stuff with the banana boat spray?
Yeah, the sunscreen. But I'm thinking sweat and rosin. As long as you didn't have Phil Cuzzy checking you when you were exiting the field, you probably have been okay. But let's talk a little bit about the Scherzer situation. Obviously, we're making light of it, but it's kind of come and went. He's since obviously received a 10-game suspension to. A future Hall of Famer, and I think it makes sense for us to touch on some of the specifics of what exactly went down. And, at the end of the day, Max is, to his credit, has been very upfront and available. And it sounds to me from the outside looking in that, it's hard for me to believe that, based on what transpired, first of all, the ejection, number one, and then second of all, the 10-game suspension, which I get is standard with an ejection under those circumstances. But tell me your opinion on what you heard happen.
So, from my understanding, when this first all came about, is that it seems to me that what I didn't understand, what I have an issue with, is the fact that they're leading with sweat and rosin, which is the original tack, is oldest time. Where you get into the
legal, right?
It's legal. Legal. That's why we put a rosin bag out there. So if we're talking about sweat and rosin, then trust me, Scherzer ain't going to be the first person to fall. We're going to get into July and August, and you're out in Atlanta in those months. That's the only thing that you got going. You're going to be sweating, and those days. It's like we're playing in the Florida State League, and you're sitting out in the outfield, and sweat is literally dripping off your fingers. And as position players, we're going out there, and I tell you, everybody out there, when we go out there, when it's that hot and it's that humid, there is a rosin bag for position players as well. Yep. Guys will come out. You put it. I know you did the same thing. You put it right above your glove on the inside because when there's a ball hit, you're going to have to be prepared. So that's the only thing that I have a problem is in the media. It's being led with sweat and rosin, which should not be the case. But I'm interested as to what the details are and how far into the investigation it went to if it was determined that it was in fact a foreign substance, because we haven't heard anything about a foreign substance, if that being spider tack or going to the next level, which we know is doing the extra trick with the little banana boat with rosin. Now that stuff can get gnarly. Taking a shower after the game, you're not getting that stuff off.
Yeah, 100%. Like I remember, to your point about using the rosin, even as a position player, for my glove hand, and it gets so sticky that by the end of the game, like literally my glove is stuck to my hand, which is the point, right? And you're right. Like it goes to post game, like when you are physically using like rubbing alcohol to get the stuff off your hand, which So going back to Scherzer, this is what I don't understand. At least based on what I read, allegedly, they tell him during one of the encounters post inning, hey man, it's a little too much, or maybe there's some resemblance of something being too sticky. They actually made him change his glove, to my understanding, which he did. When he came back out underneath in the dugout, he physically washed his hands with alcohol in front of a major league official who witnessed him do this. He goes back out into the field the next inning to pitch. And then after that inning is when, the umpires had the interaction with Phil Cuzzy and they eject him from the game. So all of those, that chain of events there lead me to make it very difficult for me to believe Max is going to intentionally do something. Max is a very intelligent guy, right? He was already in front of a major league official. He washed his hands to what I would assume satisfied the major league official, goes back out onto the field. And then, my next question is, which I assume is at the discretion of the umpire, but what is too much sticky? If all he has on is he's sweating, obviously, and then using the rosin bag, which we know creates some tack, some stick, but what is too much? Like, it's a very difficult thing to put at the discretion of the umpire. And I have nothing against Phil Cuzzy, but it's ironic that he's the only umpire who's ever ejected a pitcher for having his hand be too sticky, and it's happened 3 times. So, you're putting the umpires in a weird spot, I think. You're putting the players, obviously, in a weird spot. Max has been doing the same thing, to my understanding, for the last couple of years relative to this, since this rule has been put in place, and he gets checked after every inning. It's just hard for me to believe, man. You were talking about one of the best pitchers in baseball, going to be a Hall of Famer, and I just can't. I don't know that I can get on board with this. I think Major League Baseball's got to do something to make it a little bit more discerning, whether that's, they can track real time, the spin rate of everybody's pitches, and maybe they have a range for what your spin rate is. And if it gets out of that range, now we got to address something. I don't know. My point is, it's hard for me to understand how Max gets ejected under those circumstances, but it is what it is. The rules are the rules.
Which certainly isn't a metric that umpires are getting in real time either. It's not like they don't have like a TrackMan. This is not being forwarded. This is not being observed in the war room in New York. It's not like they have the TrackMan data showing that he's having an increased RPM for that particular game. Yep. And then going to the glove. If we're talking about sweat and rosin, and we're going after a glove, trust me, you're not having sweat and rosin in a glove. There's no sweat on your glove. So if there's a foreign substance, that's a lot different. And so what exactly was in that glove? They made him change the glove. They brought it out. Then they suspended him again. So was it the glove or was it his hand? Because if we're talking about the glove, then we're talking about a foreign substance. But the way it's being led is that his hand was too sticky.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I think it's ultimately that it's his hand. I think that the glove thing was maybe a precautionary deal. I don't want to put too much into that. I don't know exactly what happened with regards to the glove, other than I'm pretty certain that Max switched gloves, I think, in an effort to say, like, what else do you want me to do, kind of deal. You know what I'm saying? But I just think Major League Baseball's got a little bit of an issue there on their hands. I know there's been some talk about trying to create baseballs that already have a tack to them, like an element of stick to them. I know I think they use a ball like that in Japan right now.
Oh, really?
I think that they.
Well, it's like it's a different mud. Well, that kind of takes me back to the point is, talking about the difference between that vinyl or a brand new pearl. Yep. And a brand new MLB pearl. I mean, when you get that, it's no different. The first thing that a player does is what do you do, Paul? You get a pearl, you spit dirt,
you rub it up,
and that's what they have. There's a reason that these balls are rubbed up is to offer that tack, because you simply can't go out there throwing brand new baseballs. It just doesn't happen. So that's what they were saying, and that was the whole controversy of the last couple of years, is spider tack, and the balls are changed, they're just not grippy, and we can't afford, and we really can't afford the guys how hard these guys are throwing. We simply can't afford the ball to be getting away when these guys are throwing 100 miles per hour. So, there's advantages from a safety precaution, but also from a performance issue, is that these guys don't need any more help than they don't need any more help. I mean, these guys, sure. The stuff that these guys have these days is ridiculous. But so, they're going to have to figure it out, because that trick is as old as time. And if we're shutting that down, we're going to have real issues. And then we're going to be right back in the same space again over this constant conflict over the balls. If it's not the spider tack, then it's the new seams, and if it's not the seams, then it's the grip. And if we bring in like another tacky substance from Japan, this is going to continue to be an issue.
Yeah, we'll see how it works itself out. I think it's unfortunate that that occurrence. And you're talking about a New York Mets team, which obviously every Max Scherzer start for them is significant and valuable. He's getting paid a bunch of money to pitch for the Mets, and he's going to have to miss 2 starts now as a result of, in theory, of something that probably could have been avoided.
Yeah, 100%. So, moving on, we have a special.
Go ahead. Go.
Well, I think you're about to segue into something else, but go ahead, Paul.
Well, I was going to ask the Cali guy. How he feels about the Oakland A's maybe not being in Cali.
Man, you know what? I think it's sad. I'm not sure exactly where we're at, and I'll take you through this. Last year, so part of the stadium, it's not just the amount of paperwork and the agreements with the city and the city hall, the mayor's office. There are so many things that go into the approval for a new stadium, but not just the approval for a new stadium. It's just getting the plans made and the proposals that go into making a stadium, to getting a new stadium. And so last year, there was a big move made on Oakland's part when they were cleared for what is called their environmental oversight, and it's a 1,200-page document for this new stadium. And when that is proposed, it's basically that is one of the key elements in the proposal to getting that checkbox to move forward with a new stadium in Oakland. They came out with the renderings about 3 years ago, and they're unbelievable, absolutely outstanding, right on the pier. And if you've been to Oakland, there's a lot of open space around there, very similar to what the Golden State Warriors did, and utilizing some of that empty dock space and having this beautiful background. And so people were really excited, and as they should be, because I don't think anybody wants to see the team leave Oakland. If you know Oakland and you've been to games, when they're doing well, there's not a better sports city with across the bay, and having that rivalry with the Giants and A's, having the 49ers, the Warriors. It's a very unique place, and it's some of the best fans, most dedicated fans, because even through the dark times, they continue to go out, and like the true diehard Oakland fans, I have enormous respect, and I'm also biased because my cousin is from Oakland and is one of the biggest Bay Area sports fanatics there is. And he's the type of guy who would, when he was in law school, he would take his buddies, $3 hot dogs and just enjoy being at the Coliseum. What's the most disappointing on my end, and for you also, is that place sucks. That place is awful. It's the worst ballpark in baseball. And I think it's at the point where they really haven't helped themselves much. And I think that's the only thing that I can't get on board. I can't back that up. I can't personally justify that because they really have done nothing to help their cause. They've put bad product on the field. They haven't done anything to that stadium. There is very similar tensions between ownership and the fans that's happening in Cincinnati right now, where they're not investing the money. Great American Ballpark got a huge facelift going into All-Star, but the A's do not have that type of luxury. And when I go there, I was fortunate enough to go there last year, again, to be on the field and go through the facilities, and just nothing has changed. And it's hard to imagine that is something that, you're simply not going to get free agents to sign there, with those types of facilities. You need that type of boost to attract people. And I think that's one of the things that, when Toronto turned itself around, you have the Dome. It's not necessarily a peach of a stadium, but they made a massive overhaul to the facilities, to the locker room. And that's when you started to see some free agents. And that was part of the ascent of Toronto. But going to Vegas, I think it's devastating for the city of Oakland. As much as I want to see that organization succeed and to have a proper stadium, I really think for the heart and soul of that city and what the A's mean to that city, it's really disappointing. And seeing that Vegas is just kind of buying up, it's almost like I feel like Vegas is like a venture cap firm, and they're just going around just buying, they're just going out and buying companies to put into their portfolio. It doesn't necessarily make sense that they just got a brand new AAA stadium. Paul, we played in that exhibition game years back at the old Cashman Field, and that was a piece of crap as well. And they got a brand new stadium, AAA stadium. So putting a big league stadium in there as well, I mean, there's a lot going on. You have the Nashville Golden Knights, you've got a hockey team, you just got the Raiders, you have a brand new baseball field. Now you're looking to get an MLB team. You have a 10-year contract with Formula One, where the Strip is now going to be a regular fixture on the Formula One schedule, which is a ton of money, huge money generator, upwards of $350 million for a race. So it's tough, and knowing that they got passed for that, it's sad to see. And I sent you the article on Reggie Jackson. And I just feel like it's incredibly it's really sad that they're celebrating an incredible history. They won 3 World Series in a row in the 70s. Reggie Jackson being a part of that, and he was in an article ripping the organization, as well as which he should, because it really hasn't changed much, and they really haven't done much to support the club. I believe that was last week, and to fast forward and be like, hey, we have plans to leave. I got a big problem with that.
Yeah, I you touched on it, but at the end of the day, man, it's all based on the economics of a lot of the implications. Vegas, I mean, it's right. Like, it's from an MLB standpoint, from the organization, like, they're going to have just an immense amount of resources there. Obviously, the stadium's going to be cutting edge. To your point about free agency and whether or not players are going to be willing to go there or not, that's going to be a complete game changer, right? I assume with the move, there's probably in some way, shape, or form some requirements to, implement some, making the team kind of be a little bit more intentional about being competitive with regards to their salary and the team payroll and those kinds of things. So it is unfortunate, kind of the ending of an era is what I would call it. I do agree with you. The stadium in Oakland stunk relative to even when we played, and that you're talking about a little while back, right? And so now relative to some of the newer places, it's just a huge competitive in there. And then from an advertising standpoint, all that stuff, it's all about the economics of the game and where it's going. But side of that, it is kind of exciting to all of the stuff that you mentioned about Vegas. Vegas is obviously a unique place in and of itself, but all of the stuff that's going on there, a fan has to be pretty fired up about, whether you are currently living in Vegas or whether you just want to travel somewhere and have a whole bunch of options in terms of things that you can do. It's definitely going to put itself on the map from a national standpoint with regards to what they bring to the table.
Yeah, 100%. And you're talking about it was the kind of the venture cap, kind of the portfolio. It's a great play on a business side. If you're Las Vegas as a business, it's a great play where the amount of tourists, it's one of the most rapidly growing cities in America. They have the population to where that they have the potential that team will be adopted the same way that Vegas, the Golden Knights have, but also it's part of that entertainment portfolio. You want hockey, we got hockey. You want playoff hockey, we have playoff hockey. You want boxing, you want UFC, we got that. We got Major League Baseball if you've never seen a baseball game. But Vegas and Nevada being a hot spot for baseball, there's no shortage of baseball fans in that particular city. So that works out great. And I'm not an engineer, but I'd like to think that maybe it's not a zoning issue or it's about relocating the team elsewhere in Oakland. We did the same thing with Great American Ballpark. It's right on top of Riverfront, and their highlights, if you've seen it back in the day, where Great American Ballpark was being built on the same site while Riverfront, and they were simply just breaking it down by pieces. The same thing happened. With, I believe, I'm not sure if. Well, that was one instance, but maybe it's just a revamp of the stadium. I know the Angels did the same thing with their old stadium. It's basically on the same plate. They don't miss any games. It's just outside. Yeah. And while they don't have to necessarily displace the team like Toronto, during COVID and being at the spring training complex, but you can build outside and keep the continuity of the season going. So again, I'm not an engineer. I'm simply just trying to find and wishing for solutions to keep that team in Oakland.
Yep, I think you might be out of luck, bud.
Yeah, I think so too, unfortunately.
Hey, give me some good news. Give me a cool story about
good news. Good news. The fabric.
Big
The
league
fabric
debut.
of baseball. The fabric of baseball, as Mr. Janusz put it last night. There is an interesting story coming out of Pittsburgh. Player Drew Maggi. He is what you would call a lifer.
Yep.
And while we look at what a lifer is, I have to imagine it's 8+, 9+ years in the minor leagues. A premier hitting coach by the name of Kevin Long was considered a lifer, 11 years in the minor leagues, arguably one of the best hitting coaches in all of baseball. It's just one of those things. And when I talk to Kevin, I think it's just like a pure passion for baseball, being around in the minor leagues for 11 years. But Drew Maggi, 13 seasons in the minor leagues. He is 33 years.
Draft.
He is a 2010 draft, I believe, he was an Arizona Diamondbacks pick. He was a 15th round pick. This is his 13th year. He is 33 years old, and he is in Double-A, which is very uncharacteristic being that age and in Double-A of all places. But he recently got the call from a former, well, not necessarily teammate. I don't know if you ever played with Calix Crab, but one of we've played against him in the minor leagues. Former Brewer. He's a manager in Altoona, and he announced to Drew the other day that he would finally be getting his opportunity to play in a Major League Baseball after toiling away in the minor leagues.
Yep.
Amazing story. And you can see the emotion where what that first call is. I wasn't there for years. No, maybe I was, but the elation, it called you. It's a breathless feeling where you take that and it's just like a sigh of relief. And you can see that in the video. But while it's amazing, I do have some questions.
Yeah.
Why is somebody still playing baseball after 13 years in the minors? And why is he getting called up from Double-A hitting 190?
So I'm not sure So Drew's got 3,800 minor league at bats. Okay, 254 career hitter, 46 taters, 355 RBIs, 222 stolen bases at the minor league level. So I'm not sure relative to what who got hurt in Pittsburgh or whatever the case is, or why he got picked or whatever. That being said, I am pretty fired up for him. I agree with you. Like, that first call up is super cool. I mean, it's hard to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's spent that amount of time in the minor leagues and is now getting an opportunity. It's a euphoric experience when you're 20. For me, I was 25 and found out I was going to go to Cincinnati after playing a really good month and a half in Louisville to start the season. But this is a different deal, man. Like, you've been grinding, you've been on buses, you've been, the whole deal, man, for that period of time. And who's to know what happened? Like I said, in Pittsburgh, how long is he going to be there? Is it for a day? Does it turn into a month? Does he show up and like lights out and turn into like their utility guy? I have no idea, but you can't take it away from him, dude. All I can hope now that we're talking about it is he does in fact get activated. I know he got called up, but we've both had friends that have been called up and not actually activated. So super fired up for him, man. I think it's, to your point about the fabric of baseball, it's a little bit of good in a business that can be pretty brutal on guys at times. So super fired up for him, man. Him and his family, I think, have a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's something that was even expected. I would have to imagine that he didn't get any wind of this. Like, you and I, based
on the video with Kraft, like going through the whole story, I don't think he knew what was happening, dude.
He had no idea. And I would have to imagine, like, when you're in, you're at the precipice of making that jump, you're going to be in 3A, you're going to be doing well. And that's, that there's a chance that you're always one injury away. Or if you're a prospect coming through, like we were, it's just a matter about putting up the numbers and then just simply waiting to get your shot. This one, I feel like, was just completely out of left field, that it's very rare, number one, to get called up from Double-A. unless you're a prospect. I think the kid from Arizona, in arm, late, but bullpen, probably just to eat a couple innings at the end of the game, or particular in a place where the pitching staff has just been hammered and they just need an emergency guy. But when you're hitting 190 in Double-A, I don't think that's on my radar. I think I'm just down there just playing baseball, showing up to the yard, just having a good time and just doing what I do. But this is I gotta imagine this was out of left field. It'd be one thing if he was hitting 300 with 10 homers and he's playing well. But even then, I'm not, where I think I'm gonna go if I'm balling out in Double-A. I'm not going to the big leagues. I'm just looking to get to Indianapolis and at least get to Triple-A, where at least I know I'm one step closer. But it's certainly it's an interesting story. But like you said, you have to be happy for him. The elation and the relief of toiling away for that long to at least get an opportunity. I'm not sure, like you said, I'm not sure what the
now that 100%, you mentioned it, I bet there's. Sorry to cut you off. I bet you there's some guys in Indianapolis trying to figure out what's going on too.
That's a really good point too. I mean, that's probably raising some eyebrows in Indianapolis. If you're an infielder, you're probably going, I'm leading the league in doubles right now. What's happening? So I think there's a lot of question marks popping up over there. I personally want to know from a strategic point, if I'm the Pirates and we're playing so well, right? We got second best record in all of baseball. Why we're not going down into the minor leagues to get a prospect to fill that in? But why do we go? Is it out of and I can't imagine it's way too early in the year. Maybe in September, it's like, hey, this guy's. It is. Maybe this is just part of their strategy right now. It's like, hey, let's just get the kid who had absolutely no idea what's happening. Let's just give him a shot. We're playing good baseball. Let's just pull him into the fold and hope he just balls out. We got all the good juju going on up here in Pittsburgh. Yeah, I might have to get some inside info from him, but very curious situation.
Knowing Kutch the way we do, I imagine he's probably gonna take care of Drew and make sure his experience is good.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely see that Kutch is going to be the first one to greet him, ask him if he needs anything. He's probably going to give him the walk around, make sure that he's comfortable, he has everything, and and I think they have some good veterans in that clubhouse that are going to take care of him. Santana's over there as well. So it's a great spot for them. I don't know where they're going to be headed right now. I think are they still in Cincinnati? Because was that the final game in Cincy yesterday? They beat the Rojos 2-0. But that traveling and meeting up with the team, hopefully they go back to Pittsburgh and he can get a warm reception from as one of their own coming into this situation, rather than having to meet the team on the road, which can be difficult because you got no idea what to pack and how long they're going to be gone. And it's, I feel for the kid right now. My first call up was to Pittsburgh and I was a nervous wreck.
Oh man. Well, either way, it's
13 years.
Some of the good in baseball. So I'm happy for Drew. Hopefully it works out.
13 years.
Dude, it's a joke.
13 years. But it's interesting because Paul, we were both in Norfolk and ultimately you had to make a decision. You were presented an opportunity to go back to your alma mater and become a coach. And we'll admit we weren't having the best of times, in Norfolk and AAA. I think we were kind of both, at the end of our rope as far mentally, doing it again. And at some point you're preparing to do something else. Or you have to have, there are some opportunities that may present itself to where you can, see, like I've had enough. I've done what I can do. And I know that was really difficult for you, is accepting that job in the middle of the season. I think we still had a month. Had a month to go when you vacated, and you have a family. And I don't know what Drew's situation is, but either you just absolutely just love the game that much, and you really see no way for upward mobility in a particular system. So I think that's what's interesting to me, because there have to be some decisions made at some point. Either your career is going to get extended, or just how much your true love for the game. But that the love for the game only goes so far when you're talking about 10, 12-hour bus rides, playing these Friday day games and getting food that's recycled from the concession stand. It wears on you.
It's and we're talking about looking through a different lens at the end of our what I'll call our usable shelf life for you and I at that time. Like, our bodies were starting to, they weren't working the way that they used to. We also were super fortunate in having the perspective of having spent, time in the big leagues for, a long period of time over the course of, 10 or 11 years or whatever. And this is just such a different dynamic, man. Like, he's 33. I was 35 when I got done playing.
We were both 35.
Yeah. So like, that's not that far off. However, the perspective, the lens that he's looking through is so much different. So it's really hard to grasp. It's just, there's so many guys that play and do that kind of thing and play for a long time. Like you mentioned, the Kevin Long, that don't get to get called up, man. That's such a brutal business in some ways on that side of it. Like, it just goes back to why, I mean, it's a huge honor, huge privilege to play in the major leagues, right? Like, so many things have to go right and the stars have to align. And, it's cool that it's going to be part of his story now. Right. And so, but yeah, you're right about making decisions towards the end of your career. Generally speaking, the game will make those decisions for you, and tell you when you don't get to grab a jersey anymore. But anyway, going back to it, happy for Drew.
Yeah, happy for Drew. And I had one other, but just staying in baseball, and maybe that is one of the things, because if you see Corky Miller, who I hope we'll have on the show at one point, we will have on the show, and big league career, played a bunch of years in the big leagues, but him later in his career being in Louisville basically as a player coach, but that was all part of a formula to stay on as basically a player coach, who is now still in the red system as a catching.
I think Corky's the catching coordinator for the player development for the minor league system, and
there you go.
You and I both think very highly of Corky. I used to joke when I was playing that everybody should have to play half a season with Corky Miller. It literally changes who you are as a baseball player. And I still talk to Corky. I think he's great for the game. I think he's a tremendous baseball man. I believe that at some point down the road, he's going to be a coach in the major leagues. And I think that's hopefully a matter of time for him, because I know that's something that he wants to do, and I think he'd be good at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope the same, and at the end of it all, I hope that Drew has that same opportunity to stay in the game and get back into the system, because it's clear that he loves this game, and being down in the minors and having that baseball experience, that he is primed to go into some type of coaching or managerial role. So, all the best, but we'll be looking out for the rest of that story and how that plays out. But again, our hats off to him to get that opportunity. Because you said the elation, not just the shock, but it's such an accomplishment to even be considered, to put on a major league uniform, to step foot in a major league clubhouse. It really is amazing. So taking it at bare nuts and bolts, it's an amazing accomplishment.
Yep. So, and I think that's it, Dickie. Is that all we got today?
That is. I think we try to, I think the whirlwind of a weekend, things, remain the same. Tampa's at the top. Tampa's at top, but I think the biggest surprise is that Pittsburgh team, adding those veterans that are still super productive, in Carlos Santana and Kutch. Their pitching staff was dynamite from what I saw in Colorado this past weekend. So I hope they can continue that. Like I said, when I was doing the interview of ballparks that I would want to hit a walk-off home run, I said Pittsburgh, because there's not a better place, a better backdrop, better park with that backdrop to hit a walk-off. So I have been hoping that they get back to the promised land where that place is rocking on Friday and Saturday nights. One thing we did not touch on Madison Bumgarner. Paul, what do you got? What do you got? Mad bum getting
Yeah.
mad and then getting DFA'd.
Yeah, man, I'm not 100% sure what all transpired, other than the fact that he was pitching against St. Louis. There was an interaction with Wilson Contreras. He's essentially yelling at Contreras some obscenities of some sort. And the next day, man, quick trigger DFA. So there's had to be more to the story. Like there had to be some prior, instances where he kind of got sideways with, whether it was teammates or coaches or maybe the organization in general. But I don't know, man. It's you're talking about one of the best postseason pitchers ever. It's really unfortunate if something like this was is the way that it ends for him. But the actual instance, I'm not sure exactly if there's more to it, background with him and Contreras specifically. It looked like he was, to your point, very mad about something. And, we'll have to look into it, I guess. But I'm curious to see, because there was it was a lot of money, like $35 million left on his deal that the Diamondbacks are going to forego. So they had to feel pretty strongly about.
Very strongly. And that's not a team that can afford to just let money go like that. And to your point, where you're talking about, the potential prior instances, this isn't something that just pops up and you're like, hey, he's been suspended for a couple games for behavior detrimental to team policy, which is a low-key saying of, he's just not, something happened. Something happened. There was a particular one incident that happened where he's gonna miss this start. This is DFA'd, where you're just like, hey, listen, we beat it.
It has to be egregious. In their eyes, it has to be egregious to forego the money. And I mean, he wasn't throwing well. Arizona's, they got a young team, relatively speaking. They're playing well, man. I think they're in first place right now, tied with the Dodgers. So they're playing well. But all that to say, it's a pretty drastic move.
Absolutely. So another story that we'll see unfold over the next week, and hopefully by the time we get back on here, either he's landed a job or he hasn't. So it'll be a very curious case there. But we're going to wrap this up today. This is Farm to the Show. Once again, go check us out on YouTube. Give us a like, subscribe. We'll be back. It's been an interesting couple weeks, and hopefully we'll see what transpires this week. We'll be back on. Paul, as usual.
Yep.
It's been great.
Dickie, keep it real, bro. Keep it real. We'll circle back.
Always.